Podcast, the one and only law enforcement podcast that's tackling critical policing and social justice issues and provides insights into the daily realities of policing with your host, Chief Virgil Green.
Happened before, and it's going to happen again unless you demand transparency within surveillance.
Growing concern across Georgia tonight about flock cameras.
Several law enforcement officials across the state have been charged with misusing the surveillance tech in just the last week. So is it just a few bad apples or a symptom of a wider problem? And that is where we start tonight on the News at 10. I'm Russ Spencer.
And I'm Christine Spiro. In the latest instance, a Greene County deputy is accused of using the flock database for personal business.
And he's not alone. Within the last few months, at least 10 other members of law enforcement around the state have been charged with the same. Fox 5's Rob DiRienzo joins us tonight with a closer look at the growing concerns over those flock cameras. Rob?
That's right, guys. Good evening to you both. I spoke with the co-founder of Flock, which is headquartered right here in Atlanta. She thinks these cases are a small price to pay for all the crime that the system solves. But the ACLU of Georgia says this is a wake-up call. Growing public distrust after several officers have been charged across Georgia for using the Flock license plate tracking database for personal reasons.
It has happened before, and it's going to happen again unless you demand transparency within surveillance.
In Greene County, Deputy Kenesha Goss was fired on Tuesday, charged with misusing the Flock system. Earlier this week in Albany, 5 police officers. Last month in Cherokee County, a lieutenant, sergeant, and deputy were all charged with violating their oath.
In this case, where misuse happened, the technology itself was not creating the misuse. It was human beings.
Paige Todd, the Atlanta-based company's co-founder, says many of the recent arrests have come as a result of departments using their new audit assistance tool, which flags unusual searches.
The best way to prevent misuse is now every member of law enforcement out there knows that this audit exists.
It uses AI.
And that's why information security analyst Peter Tran says this is so unnerving for so many because this network of cameras has the ability to track a lot about you, which becomes searchable in a nationwide database.
It becomes a privacy and security issue. So your whereabouts, where you shopped, your name, your address.
Across the country, there's a growing pushback against flock cameras, with dozens of communities ending their contracts with the company over privacy concerns.
Jeopardizing your civil rights and civil liberties is never just an unfortunate event. You have constitutional rights, especially a right to privacy. And the question is, who polices the police?
But Todd believes the good her company has enabled cops to do has outweighed the bad.
We, I believe, solve about 1 million crimes with our technology. 10,000 missing people have gone home because of it. This feels like pretty small in comparison.
And guys, meanwhile, there are dozens of videos circulating on social media explaining to people how they can break, disable, or tear down these flock cameras. But it did happen in Barrow County. The sheriff there says it happened to 3 flock cameras, and he reminded people it is a felony. Live in Midtown, Rob DiRienzo, Fox 5 News.
Well, it's an issue that's not going away. Rob, thanks very much.
I want to welcome everybody to another episode of You and the Law podcast. I'm the host of the show, Chief Virgil Green, and as always, I want to thank you for taking the time to tune in and join us for definitely another informative topic on You and the Law podcast. And just with that opening of the podcast, as we talk about the flock camera systems and the benefits and now the concerns that the public has with some recent incidents that have occurred, we're going to have a conversation tonight about this technology. Technology has transformed modern policing from body cameras to drones and automatic license plate readers. Today, officers have more investigative tools than ever before, but with greater technology comes greater responsibility. Recent allegations involving officers accused of improperly accessing flock system cameras have sparked concerns across the country. Is this simply misconduct by a few individuals, or does it reveal a larger need for stronger oversight and accountability? So tonight, we'll separate the technology from the people using it and ask an important question: how do we protect both public safety and the public trust? And as you've seen in that video, there's been a lot of concerns across the country, especially in Georgia, where officers have been arrested and charged with misusing this technology for their benefits. Some have tracked, people that they've met. Some have tracked people that they've dated, and some have used the system to for other personal gains. And so throughout this podcast, I want to, if you have any questions or any comments, definitely put them into the chat, and I'm going to put that up on the screen. And so, ask your questions in the chat and tell me what are your concerns, if you have any, about this technology and how this technology that you know of is working in your community. Because the technology is here to stay. It is definitely benefit a lot of agencies and a lot of communities finding loved ones or even finding murder suspects. And so throughout the next hour, we're going to definitely talk about the positive side of this technology, and also look at some of the negative things that have happened, and ask some questions as to what are some agencies doing to prevent some of these things from happening. And I'll have to say, when I came up with this topic to talk about the flock camera systems, I definitely noticed a lot of some agencies, especially in Oklahoma, who had put out some social media posts explaining to their communities how they were using the flock camera systems and the benefits of it, and some of the concerns that people are just generally having around the use of this technology. So as we talk about the flock camera backlash versus the public safety and the privacy, a lot of people are going to say, well, see, this is something that we said was going to happen when this technology was first introduced. The technology has been around for a number of years. It has definitely solved a lot of crimes. It has definitely found a lot of people. But now the technology is being used for things that it shouldn't be used for. And the question is going to be, does Flock have some systems in place that agencies can use to do some real-time audits to make sure that officers are not using this data for their own personal benefits? And there's definitely a lot of conversations around the country, especially from the ACLU and other organizations, that are questioning this type of technology and the privacy, which, again, you have some people going to say, well, hey, this is another big brother looking over us. But as someone who has been in law enforcement as long as I have, and I've talked about the positive sides of the flock camera systems, now it is just coming out that there are some things that officers can do to violate some policies that are in place to prevent these things from happening. And again, one of the questions is going to kind of come out, well, who's policing the police? What safeguards are there? Are supervisors able to in real time go in and check? Are there certain safeguards that are being put in place that an officer or an investigator has to get some type of supervisor's permission to even log into the system to investigate certain crimes? But again, it's definitely alarming when you hear that, more than a handful of officers, especially in the state of Georgia, have been arrested and are now facing charges. And they definitely have been terminated from those agencies. But the question is going to come out, okay, well, how did these things happen in the first place? And so that's some of the questions that we're going to be talking about throughout the hour, as to how did these things happen and why. But again, the technology is there for the benefit of the agency, for the benefit of the public. But also you do have people who are abusing this technology. And the technology is definitely advanced outside of the in the public space, because you are seeing a lot of HOAs, homeowners associations, who are now purchasing these flock cameras to put into their neighborhoods. And you're also seeing the cameras show up in parking lots such as your Home Depot and your Lowe's Depot businesses. And so there again, it's how these agencies are able to share this information when they're looking for certain suspects who've been involved in crimes. And so, one of the things, again, this is not to criticize the technology that Flock has presented to law enforcement and to the public, but also a question about when the technology is being misused, or even when the technology is probably used in the right way. But there's been cases where individuals have been accused of committing certain crimes that they have not committed. But there again, it's technology, and so there's going to be some breakdowns in the system as to how did these things really happen. And so I'm going to share some videos with the listening audience tonight. But again, I want to remind you that if you have any questions or comments, put them into the chat about how do you feel about this technology and the benefits of it, or let me know what you don't think that the benefits are, because again, there are benefits and there are definitely some concerns that the public have about this technology. And so the next video that I want to show, it comes out of Knoxville, Tennessee, where an elderly man was located by using the flock cameras. And so this is just an example of how the technology is definitely working to benefit law enforcement and to get individuals back home safely to their families.
This is on the Alcoa Highway over on UT campus over that way.
KPD soon got a hit thanks to flock cameras, a type of surveillance video that detects license plates, also known as LPR technology.
We run the truck through that LPR system, and fortunately we were able to get a quick hit on the vehicle. We found him in the area on Needland Drive.
Thankful that her husband was found safely and quickly. This wife is thrilled that this kind of technology is being used within the community.
And I didn't realize that they had that type of technology. I was just amazed and shocked, how they just maneuver and how they could track him down like that, So I'll tell anybody that is really something.
In Knoxville, Erica Lunsford, WVLT News.
And Scott Erlin with KPD says this is the second missing person that they've been able to find with these flock cameras, and they've also recovered more than $900,000 worth of stolen property using the LPR technology.
Well, in that video, in that news clip, you definitely see how the LPR cameras were able to find a missing husband in a very short period of time. And, one of the things that I've said when I've talked to community members about the technology, because they do have there is a lot of concern about it. But one of the things that I've talked about is stories just like this here, is that when you do have an elderly population who are still driving vehicles, they may be suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, but they feel that they can still get out and drive to the store or drive wherever they need to go. And we've seen cases to where individuals have crossed state lines and went into another state and even multiple states, and have been missing for days. And I have to say, when this technology did not exist, we relied upon the signs that everybody is seeing on the interstates where it says an Amber Alert. That Amber Alert is put out to let people know, hey, we're looking for this vehicle. But can you imagine, say a decade ago when this technology did not exist? And if it did exist, it was very limited in certain parts of the country. And in some communities, there was just so much of a public concern about it. A lot of police departments did not move forward, and their local governments did not approve of this purchase. And so, but here's a situation where, you know, a wife reported a husband missing. His license plate was entered into the system, and a flock camera had an alert that was sent to that agency for them to find the vehicle. And oftentimes, everything this is done in real time, and oftentimes officers are able to locate those vehicles in the same area where cameras have made a hit on them. And so I want to thank Mr. Hollis for tuning in and joining You and the Law podcast tonight. But again, hopefully you can add some comments to the chat tonight. But because again, these cameras exist in a lot of states, pretty much almost every state they exist in every community. And so I know Mr. Hollis, you're in Arkansas, so they may exist in the communities that you live in. But again, we want to have an honest, an open conversation and dialogue about this technology and why this technology is so important to have in our communities. And again, that story right there, where a wife was she reported her husband missing, and the law enforcement agencies were able to recover, find him, and get him home safely. And so that is just another example of why there's been such a positive experience with these camera systems, but also there's been some negative concerns about it. And, maybe a lot of people who are listening to the podcast tonight, you're kind of like, okay, well, where are these cameras located at? If you are driving down a major street, and if you look up and you see just a single black pole with a device on it that looks like it's has a solar power and it has a little camera on it, that's most likely an LPR camera. Now, I do know, especially in the state of Oklahoma, Oklahoma went to a system to where it can identify tags that do not have insurance. And so the owners of those vehicles will get a letter in the mail letting them know that there was a hit on their vehicle and their vehicle does not have insurance on it. And so, again, the technology is being used in various different ways, but also here's an example of where people are who don't have car insurance, or they may have let their car insurance, go past due, and they don't renew their car insurance. Well, there are these cameras that are set out throughout the Oklahoma city area, and even in other parts of Oklahoma, where individuals are getting notifications that, hey, you need to get insurance. And if you don't get insurance, you can get insurance from the state. But again, there's a lot of concerns and some misinformation about what these cameras do. And I'll tell you, just don't take my word for it. Type in Google flock cameras, and that information is going to be readily there for you to be able to read what the cameras can be used for and what they're not used for. And I think a lot of people have some concerns that the cameras are being used to track people, images. No, the cameras are not being utilized as facial recognition. It's not. The cameras, as you're driving down the street, these cameras are taking pictures of every single vehicle. And let's say there's a vehicle that's being involved in a homicide in a whole nother state. And this vehicle is a vehicle that law enforcement is looking for to question the individuals in that vehicle. And you get a hit off of that vehicle. Now they know, hey, there was and actually I'm going to show a news clip where a murder was committed in another state, but the vehicle was found in another state, and law enforcement officers were able to make an arrest on an individual who was involved in a murder in another state. And so again, the technology is definitely there to benefit law enforcement, but as we seen in the first clip, the technology is being utilized by officers for all the wrong reasons, and it's definitely caused a lot of concerns within the public. And so one of the and I'm going to show this video because again, I think it's one of the things I would like to say before I show this video is that law enforcement agencies definitely need to be transparent with their communities about this technology. Some agencies probably did not have community meetings to say that we're bringing this technology into our communities. Some smaller communities have definitely had public forums, public discussions about utilizing this technology, and they got some input, whether it was positive or negative. And oftentimes it has been more negative, and there's been a lot of pushback from it. And so you see where these agencies don't move forward with the technology, but there may be a neighboring jurisdiction that does have the technology. And so again, there are just a lot of questions about it. And so I want to get to one of the comments in the chat by Mr. Hollis, who puts in the chat that I thought police had to have a reason to flag someone's license plate. That type of policing can very well be used to racially profile a person of color. Mr. Hollis, I'm gonna say, I think, one of the things that is a concern, especially in the Black community, but these cameras are not taking pictures of a person's face. They're just taking a picture of a vehicle and a license plate. And so at no time is there an image of a individual person that will let officers know that car is driven by any race of a person. It's just a camera that is catching the image of the vehicle as well as the license plate of the vehicle. And for those who travel throughout Oklahoma, Kansas, who travel a turnpike, these cameras they have cameras throughout the turnpike that take pictures of your vehicle and take pictures of your tags. And so, but those cameras are totally different from the flock cameras, but you do see a lot of states, Texas, and many other states who are putting these cameras out on the interstates because they see that there's a benefit that they may get an alert on a vehicle that's traveling down a major interstate. It may be a person who is missing from a halfway across the country, but they're in Texas, or it may be a person who is wanted for questioning of a homicide in another state, or it may be somebody who is involved with some kind of child molestation. And so, but again, the cameras are not being used to identify a person's race. And I think that's one of the misconceptions that the public has about these flock cameras, is that they can be utilized to racially profile people. And it's just not the case. And people are going to say, well, how do you know they're not being used to racially profile anyone? Because again, the cameras are taking a picture of the vehicle as it's passing, and it's a picture of the rear license plate and the make and model of the car. And so you cannot see inside of the vehicle as to what race that that individual person is. But that is definitely a good question to ask, because there is a lot of concerns about can these cameras be used for racial profiling? And some people are going to say, well, what if an officer utilizes that information? They got your tag number, they got the make and model of the vehicle. Now they can search and they can tell, what race you are, where you live at. And again, that's some of the concern that has been raised, especially by some, like the ACLU, the NAACP, and some other organizations, because officers are misusing this information. And again, it's not the technology that's being misused, it's the people who are tapping into the system who are misusing that technology. And I have to say, once again, a lot of people are going to go back and say, well, we had these concerns many years ago, and everybody said, no, there were safeguards that were put in place that would prevent these things from happening. Well, if that's the case, what oversight do police departments have in place, and what policies do they have in place, and what auditing system do they have in place to prevent these things from happening? Because again, I think that's one of the main conversations about what safeguards have been put in place. But some people are going to say, well, now these crimes have been committed. Now these agencies have put in place some safeguards that would prevent that from happening, or maybe even Flock has come up with some new technology that the agencies can utilize to have real-time audits being done on these systems. But clearly, there has to be some steps taken to really prevent these things from happening, for people to feel like, especially the public, that their privacy is not being violated by law enforcement. And also, the question is going to kind of come up, okay, well, if these cameras are on private properties, who have access to the cameras? Does the private property have access to the cameras? Do law enforcement have access to the cameras? What other people have access to the cameras? Because again, if an HOA says, hey, we want to have these cameras put on our properties, in our homeowners association, who has access to those cameras? Does Flock have access to them? Does somebody with the homeowners association have access to them? Or is that information being shared with law enforcement? And so again, I think there has to be a lot of transparency with the public about how this technology is being utilized. You can always talk about the positive sides of any technology, whether it's, dash cameras or in-car cameras or whatever it may be, drones. There's always a lot of positive to those technologies, but there's this percentage of negative things happening. And people are going to say, well, let's just say this is only 5% of what's happening. Well, that 5% can be a very large number. It really shouldn't be even 1%. But again, this technology is being utilized for other purposes than what it should not be utilized for. And so I want to share with you, here's this next video that I want to share with those who are listening, as to how the Flock cameras were able to solve a murder investigation.
Governor Beshear asked Kentuckians to pray for both families.
New tonight, Lexington police say Flock cameras helped lead police to a wanted murder suspect from Michigan. Javion Burrell was arrested on Tuesday. Lexington police say they worked with U.S. Marshals to arrest Burrell. They say the Flock license plate readers helped find a vehicle connected to Burrell here in Lexington. Lexington installed 25 Flock cameras back in April across the city. And over the summer, police released an update on how those cameras have been used by investigators. Police say the license plate readers have helped recover 26 stolen vehicles and find 2 missing people, as well as helped out in about a dozen other investigations.
So just as we've seen in that news clip, how the technology was used to locate a person who was wanted out of the state of Michigan, who was actually in Kentucky. And so, again, if that technology did not exist in that community or in Kentucky, then this person who had committed this crime would probably still be, wouldn't have been caught. But again, that's just another example of how the technology is benefiting law enforcement and how the technology is able to find individuals who have been involved in some very serious crimes across state lines. And so, again, I think it's really important to highlight the good of the technology, but also talk about the concerns that the public has about the transparency of the technology and what our agencies doing now to show to let the public know, hey, yeah, we have done some internal audits. We've been able to see where officers have misused the technology, and we've been able to dismiss those officers. They're now facing charges. They've been arrested. But there again, it kind of goes back to the conversation that a lot of people have said before. How did these things happen? Because again, with technology, everybody's going to find a way to abuse this technology and to use it for their own benefit. And so again, it's just a growing concern. But how do we make sure that these cameras are being utilized throughout every parts of the country for the best interest of the public? Now, this next video that I want to show is going to come out of Minnesota. It's an area that I'm very familiar with. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, these are things that are raising the concerns of the public, because the situation could have definitely turned more serious depending upon how the actions of the officers and also the action of the driver of the vehicle. And so this situation took place in Plymouth, Minnesota, a suburb city that I'm very familiar with. Lived in Plymouth, Minnesota, and this Kohl's where this incident happened. I had definitely shopped at this store quite often.
A local automotive journalist says he spent days unknowingly being tracked by police after license plate cameras mistakenly identified the test vehicle he was driving as stolen. Kent's going to break down how all this happened and why this story is sparking a much bigger conversation about surveillance.
Right after returning a package at the Kohl's near his Plymouth home.
Hello, sir. Can you come out to me, please?
Joel Fetter.
Is it just you and the wife?
And his wife.
Both of
were suddenly surrounded.
I was parked here. There was a car here, so I couldn't just drive away.
Even a week and a half later, he still can't believe it.
And I legitimately looked at my wife and I was like, I wasn't even speeding. Like, there's nothing I did wrong.
That certainly didn't stop things from getting tense.
Are you armed at all? No. No? Okay, is this your car?
It's complicated, can I explain it?
Joel is director of content and product at thedrive.com, meaning the Land Rover he was driving wasn't his, but he was test driving it for work.
I have paperwork that can show you that I drive this for the week.
Okay.
It's owned by Jaguar Land Rover. If you run the plates, it's owned by Jaguar Land Rover. They own it.
Little did he know Plymouth police had already run them.
The reason you have 4 cops here is because your license plate is registered as stolen license plates in our system.
Are you serious? 15 years doing this job, I've never had this. This is insane.
That's because the plates were flagged by an emerging surveillance network of flock cameras. And not just before this stop.
Hit on our license plate readers the other day, too. So.
Are you serious? Cameras that read my license plate now twice in the last couple of days. And it picked up and flagged it for the cops. You guys have been searching for this car. Unreal.
And it turns out the issue at the heart of the stop really wasn't real. Plymouth police released him after more than an hour, telling us today, quote, when the license plate was reported as stolen in California, it was improperly entered in the National Crime Information Center database with incomplete numbers.
Manufacturer plate for New Jersey has 2 big numbers 2 little numbers and 3 big letters, okay? 3410 DTM was my plate, but what got flagged was 34 DTM.
In a statement from Flock, the company wrote, "We take incidents like this seriously and are looking closely at what happened. Flock's system is highly accurate and situations like this are rare. That said, an alert should be one part of an investigation, not the whole basis for a stop."
I think the issue is that a human error got amplified because this technology doesn't have enough guardrails in place. The police officers that day told me there were 4 plates, including mine, in the state of Minnesota, that were hitting on 34 DTM on Flock cameras. 4. Range Rover told me there's about 15 Range Rovers in the nationwide fleet that had some combination of 34XX DTM. They had to freeze the whole fleet until this whole got figured out. Because other people can get pulled over, might not have ended the same.
This is the craziest story, legitimately.
There are so many concerns here. I mean, I'm thankful my kids were in the car. I'm thankful the cops had the patience to listen and they didn't come in hot and angry, guns drawn. I mean, someone could have got shot, right?
Again, Joel is relieved that concern didn't become reality, but just a few weeks prior, he did a whole podcast on thedrive.com about the many privacy concerns that can arise for car owners when our local governments pay private companies like Flock for cameras that can tap into national databases and track you with AI. A few days later, that concern certainly became real. Jana.
As is his concerns about guardrails. Like, all of the stuff about privacy seems to be moving too fast.
Again, yeah, that's his whole point, because he says the database itself was where the error is, but he doesn't understand why the Flock cameras didn't catch that little number that would have prevented all of this.
Just wild stuff. Doesn't look good for Flock. Thanks so much, Kent. We'll be right back.
Oh, okay. Hopefully I've got my mic unmuted. So probably a lot of what I just said over the last couple of minutes probably was not heard. But let me kind of go back and read a comment that's in the chat from Mr. Hollis, who stated that indeed it is a great technology to locate people who suffer from mental illness. He also states in the city of Osceola, Arkansas, a ranking police officer used its investigative computer system to get some kind of embarrassing information on his neighbors. And that cop was disciplined, but should have been fired. He says that I conducted that search personally myself. So yeah, there will be cops who abuse their powers. And I think that's one of the main concerns that the public has, is about the abuse of these systems and how this technology is being misused. And so, but again, there's a lot of positive conversation, positive things that have happened with this technology. But again, the technology has definitely been abused. And as we talk about this conversation tonight about the flock camera backlash and the public concerns about privacy, you know, one of the things that I want to ask the listening audience, you know, what policies would you like to see police departments implement that would prevent some of these things from happening? Because again, it just kind of goes back to the oversight of this technology and how this technology is definitely there to benefit the community, but also how that technology can prevent police officers, you know, somebody who's investigating the crime, from using it to check up on somebody. And clearly there have been cases to where that has definitely happened. And so this next video that I want to play to you, this is a concern that the local elected officials have addressed. But one of the things that kind of concerned me with this story was that this officer had been disciplined for violating the very policy that, and then he turns around and he does it again. And so again, agencies really need to be very aggressive when it comes to officers misusing this technology, because it goes back to the public trust. The public is going to say, we don't trust you to police yourselves, because when these incidents do happen and we find out about it months or years later, that, yeah, this officer was caught, but he was disciplined, but he's back on the job. So what would prevent him or her from not doing the same thing again? And so, again, I think that is a concern that the public has.
Some of those flock security cameras across our area are not being used in the way in which they were designed, as crime surveillance.
Yeah, that is what they're supposed to be used for. Over the past week, we've been reporting on flock cameras being spray painted over and vandalized. Some even have been sawed off. Now in Pasadena, a council member tells ABC 13's Brianna Willis an officer is accused of misusing the flock camera system. Brianna?
Yeah, Erica and Gina, the council member telling me the officer resigned here just last week following an ongoing investigation. He says that investigation reveals the officer used flock cameras just like this one, not far from the police department, to stalk a fellow female officer here. Now, according to Pasadena City Council member Emmanuel Guerrero, he says the first investigation into the officer misusing the cameras was last year in March. He says that officer was suspended and later reinstated in August 2025. But Guerrero says the next investigation, again also including allegations the officer stalked another female police officer in the department with the flock camera system, started in January. The officer involved has not yet been charged with the crime, but Guerrero says he resigned just last week and says he supports the use of flock cameras to deter crime in the city, but not this.
There's laws that protect public trust. And then the second allegation was the stalking and following of a female police officer. And the stalking or following of any officer is a felony. So there's 2 felonies at once. The misusage of the flock system is a misuse of public resources by one law enforcement individual.
Yeah, and I did, of course, reach out to the officer involved, but his attorney says they declined to comment at this time. I have also reached out to the Pasadena Police Department multiple times today. We walked in, we called, we emailed, and have texted, but so far, we have not heard back. We're live in Pasadena. I'm Brianna Willis, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
And just as we've seen in that news clip, you got an officer who is abusing the system to track one of his own fellow colleagues. And so that's a concern, is the fact that, even if it's someone in the general public, it's still a concern. But why would this officer utilize this flock camera system to track a female colleague that he may, be involved with? He's just trying to find out, where she's going and where she's at. And I think some people will ask this question, okay, well, does the cameras track a vehicle? Well, the cameras will definitely show where a vehicle has been traveling throughout the city. And officers will be able to go back and utilize that information to see what side of the city that vehicle was on, what neighborhoods that vehicle passed through. And they will be able to, and again, this is supposed to be used for an investigative tactic. Let's say you're investigating a homicide, and here you have the investigators are tracking that vehicle. So when they do locate the people who are involved in this homicide investigation, now these investigators are able to know how honest and truthful those individuals are. But they can also, besides using cell phone tower data, they're able to use these flock camera systems to track that vehicle's movement and to say, okay, well, you were in the area at the time of this homicide. Maybe you came back into that area where this homicide took place at. And so, again, it is supposed to be used for investigative purposes, but it is not being used for that purpose at all. And as we just saw in the video. And so one of the questions that's put in the chat by Mr. Hollis, he says, I believe there are already policies and state laws to govern misconduct related to misuse of department technology. The question I have is, why do these cops feel so comfortable misusing the technology? Mr. Hollis, I think one of the things is that, they know that there's not that much oversight by their supervisors, and that they could probably go in and do they can delete what they were looking for. Again, there should be safeguards in place. And again, there should be alerts. Anytime a officer or detective or somebody is conducting some type of a search of a license plate, that a supervisor, or even all the way up to the police chief, there should be some type of notification that Flock has in place that these agencies should be able to use to say, okay, well, so-and-so detective or so-and-so officer just logged into the system and they're tracking a certain vehicle. And now you can go and say, okay, well, is there a business purpose? Is there an investigative purpose that you're using to log into the system? And again, this profession is not a micromanaging profession, but at the same time, you definitely need to put in some safeguards to prevent the misuse of the technology. And again, Mr. Hollison, I just think that there are some police officers, they know when these audits are being done. And, in the video that I showed earlier from Georgia, there were supervisors who were arrested. And so, again, this goes back to a lot of questions around the trust And when you have high-ranking law enforcement officers who are misusing this technology, and even all the way up to some police chiefs around the country have been arrested and charged with misusing the technology. I have to say that some of those chiefs have been at much smaller departments and not larger departments. But again, there has to be some safeguards put in place for officers not to feel that they have just free reins to log into the system and to track a vehicle, especially to track somebody that they are maybe dating, or tracking somebody that they may have pulled over and that they're trying to get to know. Again, this is why the public has so much concerns about the use of this technology and why the technology continues to be used. And again, I go back to the technology has definitely aided law enforcement in solving crimes, finding missing people, but also now it is coming out that the technology is being misused for all the wrong reasons. In this next video that I'm going to show you is a clear example of somebody having to prove to law enforcement that they did not commit a crime, and that and it was really disturbing to see that here is how the cameras are being wrongfully used, and how this lady in Denver was being accused of committing a crime.
Hey, developing this morning, a Denver woman says that she was wrongly accused of a crime after police told her they tracked her car using flock cameras. Police went to her door accusing her of stealing a package and served her a court summons.
Chrisana Elser now saying she was never in the area of the robbery to begin with. Fox 31's Jared Dean joins us live from Columbine Valley this morning. Good morning, Jared.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah, Christina Elser was at home, heard somebody at her door, went to her door, and found a police officer from the Columbine Police Department with a summons telling her you took a package that was valued at $25 in Belmar. We have you on a doorbell camera and flock camera taking this. And she said she was never in the area and actually proved her innocence with evidence of her own. Now, that evidence included dashboard camera footage of her driving that day in another area at that time, and used Google Maps to show a log of her location to prove her innocence to the police officer. Elser says the officer denied reviewing her video, telling her it wasn't worth it. And, quote, "You have not been honest with me, so I am not going to extend you any courtesy of showing you a video I don't need to." And then after this, Elser got in contact with the chief of police, sent the evidence, and her summons was voided. But she says she didn't need to prove her innocence in the first place.
You know we have cameras in that town, and you can't get a breath of fresh air in or out of that place without us knowing, correct?
They need to be used properly and be used with caution in a conversation versus we're now going to use this to accuse anybody and everybody.
We reached out to the Columbine Police Department. We did not get a response from them. Elser says that she encourages those in the community and her neighbors to get cameras of their own so they don't have to go through what she went through. Live in Littleton, Jared Dean, Fox 31.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about flock cameras yesterday in Aurora. That was your story, Jared, and now you're talking about a town, Columbine Valley, as well. So a lot to talk about this program. Thanks.
You know, once again, here is another example of an agency not being transparent, because again, you've got an officer standing at this person's door, accusing him of a crime that they did not commit, and pretty much basically told the lady that he really didn't care what she had to say. And this was all over, as you heard, a $25 package that was stolen off of somebody's front porch. But the officer was pretty verbally, I won't say just overly aggressive, but definitely made the lady feel uncomfortable because she was being accused of a crime and that she was being summoned to appear in court over a package of $25. And so she had her own in-car camera. She had was able to prove that that was not her. But again, just another example of why the public has so much concerns about police departments utilizing this technology and how this technology is being abused. And so that is just and again, I think when people see this type of video footage and people hear the conversations around the concerns with the flock cameras and the backlash that the public has. And again, it's not so much the company Flock, it is the police departments. And I want to make that very clear. This conversation is not negative against the Flock itself. It is the conversation about how the police departments are abusing this technology that Flock has put together for the benefit of the public, and how Flock is being able to share with different communities around the country that by having these cameras, there is definitely a much more benefit to having the cameras than it is not to have these cameras in your community. But this last video that I want to show is comes from LA, and here's one of the largest police departments in the country, and they're ending their agreement with Flock to have these cameras placed around the city of Los Angeles.
Let's get down to breaking news right now. The LAPD is ending its agreement with Flock Safety. Flock operates surveillance cameras throughout Los Angeles. And Eyewitness News reporter Tim Pulliam is live in Echo Park with the breaking details. Tim.
Yeah, David, LAPD uses Flock cameras around the city, but today the department announced it is allowing its contract and agreement with the company to expire starting tomorrow. Now, Flock cameras are used to take images of vehicles and license plates on the road. LAPD says that it helps them in tracking down suspects involved in a crime. Now, some people in the community like that surveillance. Others say that it violates their privacy. LAPD says that concern is what led to its decision.
Well, this contract's not being renewed because of serious concerns around civil liberty and civil rights issues, particularly around privacy and the data that's being collected from these cameras. So the LAPD had to make a difficult decision of continuing, in this case, discontinuing using Flock services until we can get those data, privacy, security, and sharing concerns ironed out through a contractual relationship.
LAPD's contract with Flock ends tomorrow, and their tech department is not sure if the cameras will still be recording. LAPD doesn't own the cameras. In many cases, they are owned by organizations and homeowners associations who have allowed police and the city to have access to them. Now, LAPD says it is having ongoing conversations with the company in revising the agreement. They want updated language around privacy and the storing of data to be included in this new agreement. I've reached out to Flock for a comment about this, and I am still awaiting a response. Tim Pulliam, ABC 7, Eyewitness News.
And we just heard in that news clip, here is a major city who has a police department who has some concerns surrounding the technology and how they are kind of pulling away from the Flock camera systems until there are some safeguards that's put in place. And I have to say, this is not something that a lot of people would expect to see out of a major city such as LAPD do. But again, I think with everything that has happened, they want to make sure that there's some safeguard that's put in place either by Flock or some safeguard that they're being put in place by the agency. Because again, there has to be a lot of conversations around the protection of this data. Flock has stated that this data is after 30 days, nobody has access to the data. The data just goes away. But again, how many, let's say your vehicle is traveling past a Flock camera multiple times a day. Well, how long is that data? How long is your tag information stored into that database. Again, let's just say you at day 29 or day 30, you pass right through another camera, and now your tag is back in the system. And so again, there's a lot of questions that the public has about the system and how it's being utilized, especially if it is, vehicle tags are continue to be tracked. And again, it's not a person that's being tracked. Let's be very clear about that. These LPR cameras are not tracking a person, but they're tracking the vehicle and the tag of that vehicle. Because again, as we talked about throughout this podcast, there's definitely a lot of positive things that have happened, but there's also definitely a lot of negative things that have happened with this technology. And I stated at the beginning of the podcast, I noticed this past week, especially leading up to having this conversation tonight about the flock camera system, that I've seen agencies in Oklahoma, I've seen agencies in other parts of the country who have taken to social media to explain why they are, number one, why the cameras exist in the communities and the benefits of those. And they've also addressed some of the concerns that that other people are talking about with the misuse of the cameras. But I think one of the main things that really needs to be discussed is the fact that, when these cameras are being misused, what are agencies immediately doing to address those? And up to terminating and up to making sure that criminal charges are being brought against people who are misusing the technology, because, and also being very transparent with the public about it. When you do find these things happen, don't just keep that information internally, but share that with the public so the public knows that you do have safeguards in place. Because the last thing we need to see is where the public does not trust their local police department. And again, there's a lot of good positive to this technology, and hopefully, agencies will put some safeguards in place, and they will work with Flock to put some things in place internally to where we don't continue to see or hear about the misuse of this technology from around the country. But again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and for the comments that were put into the chat. And as we talked about the flock camera backlash and the public concerns about privacy, is not going to go away. But again, hopefully in the coming weeks and coming months and the coming year, that more safeguards will be put in place to prevent some of these things from happening. I got one other comment in the chat from Mr. Hollis. Again, technology is very useful in preventive and solving crimes, but to deter this misconduct going forward, there needs to be severe penalties for police officers who misuse the technology. If conduct is found to be a pattern or repetitive, then the police officer should be terminated. I'm not excluding criminal charges. Again, the public needs to know when officers are misusing this technology. And as we've seen, that I played at the top of the podcast, where a handful of officers in the state of Georgia have been arrested and are charged and that are no longer working for those departments. But they found ways to get around the system. And so we need to make sure that there are safeguards that are being put in place to prevent these things from happening, and that there's not patterns that are being utilized. And I know, Mr. Hollis, you asked this question, why would somebody feel so comfortable with violating a policy or violating this technology? Again, these are human beings. They make mistakes. We're supposed to be above making mistakes like this here. But again, this is just one piece of technology that's a tool that is definitely there to benefit police departments. But now we're seeing that it's being misused to track people and to violate people's privacy. But, again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to tonight's podcast. And, definitely if you missed any portions of this podcast, go to our YouTube channel. If you don't subscribe to You and the Law podcast on YouTube. Follow us on Spotify and so many other podcast platforms. But again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening to our conversation tonight about the flock camera systems and the privacy concerns. And make sure you tune in next Thursday, because it is definitely going to be another informative topic right here on You and the Law podcast. Everybody have a good night and see you next Thursday.
That's a wrap on this episode of You and the Law podcast. We've got more eye-opening conversations and hard-hitting insights coming your way, so make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcast, and stay ready, because the next episode might just change the way you see law enforcement forever.